Uh, Hello student, today I'm going to teach you about the temporal data mining. The temporal data mining is a special kind of data mining in which we use the concept of the Markov model and hidden Markov model for classifying or prediction of the temporal data. In To understand the Markov model, I am giving you an example. Um, I shall give you an example. After that, I shall explain you what is the actually hidden Markov and Markov model, because it would be easier for you after looking at the example. Uh, example. Suppose, suppose, suppose there is a coin that is a fair in its nature, and there are the equal possibility of coming head or tail when we toss a coin. And it means that the probability of coming heads is equals to 1 by 2, and the probability of coming toss is also equals to 1 by 2. We can equally move to the any of the incidents. Suppose and here there are two events after tossing a coins, either head or tail. But we in hidden Markov model, what we do, we first find out the events which are related to each other and arrange a sequence in between them. In this examples, with a tossing of coins, there are only two possible outcomes, either head or tail. The possibility of occurring head is equals to 1 by 2, and probability of coming tail is equals to 1 by 2. So here we have connected two outgoing edge from the head event. The one with 0.5 probability move back to the head position, and the one with the 0.5 probabilities moves to the tail position. Similarly, at the tail event, there are two possible outcomes. One with the 0.5 probability move back to the tail position, and with another with the 0.5 probability goes to the head positions. So this is a simple graph which can easily predict the possible outcome while tossing a coin. This kinds of event is represented. This is a Markov model for tossing a coin. So now I explain you what is Markov model. In Markov model, we firstly define what are the possible outcome or event through the possible outcome. After that, we shall find out a sequence or ordering between the events. That's called the Markov chain. In this Markov chain, we define the related possibility between the previous event and the upcoming event, and this detailed diagrammatical representation in which the ordered event related to each other via some probability events and related to each other is called the Markov model. That's the simple definition of Markov model. In here, this is the simple example of Markov model. Now I shall define you with a detailed explanation that what it actually do. In Markov model, first Markov model, we considered that there is a sequence of t number of events which are related to each other in sequential manner. That, as it is written here, we can consider a sequence of successive state. This sequence has a length t. Here there are t events W1, W2 up to Wt, which are related to each other, and they follow the same order as W1, W2, W3 and Wt. Here order means through W1 we can go to the W2, and W2 from W2 to W3 and so on up to Wt. And every possible states, the successive states, is related via a link which shows the probability of between these two events. This probability is represented by the transitional probability. The formula syntax is as follows: P Wj in bracket t plus 1 bar Wit is equals to Aij. Here there are two events I and j, which in which Wi is the previous event and Wj is the next event. The timestamp of the next event is also +1 related to the previous event. So Wi is the event with t timestamp and Wj is the event with t plus 1 incidence. And the probability for moving from Wi to Wj event is equals to Aij. So it means we can say that Aij is the probability that the system will be in state Wj at time t plus 1, given that it was previously in a state Wi at time t. It means from W, or we can say that at time t we are in Wi state, and with a probability Aij we can move to the next state Wj in the next time t plus 1. So there is a there is a sequential chain between the related event, which are ordered to each other, and they are related to each other via with certain probability. So that's the about the Markov model. Here we are taking the simple case of the Markov model, that's called the first order Markov model. Here we are assuming that only the previous state, the next state is related to the just last previous state. The last only one previous state, yeah, last one precedent state, we can say that. But there can be also situation in which the next state depends on the last 2 or 3 previous states. That's the different case. Here we are discussing the first order Markov model, in which the next state depends just on this last one previous states. And this is model, yeah, yes. And besides this, there is also another example that's called the hidden Markov model. Then what's it actually, the hidden Markov model? The word hidden here represents some internal hidden state which cannot be observed directly. These states are the states which do not happen every time, but these are the possible situations that may occur. In general, our observed data do not correspond directly to an underlying state of the model. The data correspond only to the visible state, but there are some hidden state which are also important while predicting our data. So these kinds of Markov model, which also have some hidden state, also called the hidden Markov model. After that, the topic that we were discussing was time-based data mining, yeah, temporal mining. I'm taking you back to the previous slide, and now I shall define you what is the actually temporal data mining concepts. In temporal data mining concept, first we define what is the actual event in this incidence, the occurrence of some data pattern in time. As in our case discussed, as a toss of a coin, the event is considered as the what could be the possible outcome or the event. The event could be here head and tail. So the occurrence of some data pattern in the time. So while tossing a coin, the event are head or tail. Similarly, in another event, we should first define what are the possible event or outcome. Next, the time series, a sequence of data over a period of time. As I told you that we find out the Markov chain or related sequence of event, the sequence of data over a period of time. That's a certain sequence which gets repeated over a time. As in case of tossing a coin, the sequence of heads and tail comes frequently, and this sequence of head, tail or head is called the time series, a sequence of data. Temporal pattern. The structure of the time series perhaps represented as a vector in q-dimensional metric space used to characterize and predict event. Suppose there are certain sequence of events which occur frequently, then these kinds of pattern which occur frequently or repeated after certain duration of time are specified during the analysis, and that these are called the temporal pattern. So once again, I defined you that the certain sequence of events which repeats in the analyzed data is called the temporal pattern, which repeat in a certain, there is a possibility of repetition in certain time period. Temporal pattern cluster. The set of all the vectors within some specified similarity distance of temporal pattern. The combinations of the pattern is called the temporal pattern cluster. The combination clusters of the temporal patterns is called the temporal pattern cluster. Next one is the phase space, a state space of the metrics that describe the temporal pattern. The space can be represented in different form, like their image can be represented in the Laplace and Fourier space, and also frequency domain. Besides representing a picture in the simple pixel representation, the data can also be represented in different phase space, and they can be differentiated on basis of that, and these are called the phase space. Event characterization functions connect the event to temporal pattern and characterize the event in phase space. So in short, we can say that in temporal data mining, we first define what are the event that could occur, what are the sequence of these event, possible sequence of the event, and in which order these event occur. And by analyzing our pattern, string or chain, we find out the repeated pattern that are called the temporal pattern, and the series or cluster or the clusters of these temporal pattern are analyzed, and they may also be represented in phase space also. So these are the basic concept related to temporal data mining. Okay, so to sequence mining. In sequence mining, we apply the temporal association mining or sequence mining, and we find out the event related to each other and connect to them with each other by two relations, by concepts like before and after. And it can include the time interval for the before and after events also. So basically, first of all, we do not know the probability. Then we find out the sequence in the event and relate to them each to other with help of before and after like statements. And before by later on analyzing, we associate them with the related probabilities. Sorry. Um, In this way, we apply the association rules to find out the related event, and the association rules are used to relate two events together with each other. And we try to find out the longest possible sequences so that the database time range is assumed, data can be assumed to be predictive. Uh, Next one. That yeah, after doing all this, there are some general concepts about that for finding out the analyzing the data. In after plotting the data distribution over a graph via declaring the 2-point defines a we find note out the 2-point define a tendency, and 3-point defines a trend, and 4-point define a theory. These are just a simple statement. They are not hard and fast rule, but they can be used to find out the tendency and the trend and the final theory for the data, time related data, which occur in a sequence and are related to each other via some association rule and assumed probability of assume a probability. Okay, so some other words which are also used in it, but the most commonly used sequence that are used here are the Markov chains that with which we relate our event, and finally the Markov first order Markov model to make the clear prediction. In this way, the temporal data mining is done with help of the Markov model and hidden Markov model. That's all about this topic.